Disney Star Wars has been controversial to say the least. Personally, there are things that I didn't really like, but there were also things that I really loved. In this video, I'm going to rank all 20 of the Disney Star Wars projects, going over every show, movie, and miniseries they have put out since Disney bought Lucasfilm. Obviously, these are all my own opinions. I know that everybody feels differently about the Disney Star Wars era. These are just my thoughts. I'm gonna give a spoiler warning here because I feel like it was necessary to give spoilers to explain my reasoning for each placement. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and sharing. It will greatly help to grow and sustain the channel. And if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, and you can also follow me on all of my other social medias, all of which are linked down below, and all of which house similar content that I make here on this channel. Now that I've said that, let's get into it. At the bottom of the list, I have The Rise of Skywalker. I think the biggest flaw with this film was the fact that Disney listened to angry fans way too much. They cut Rose out because everybody hated her character, they completely shifted gears, and basically wrote an entirely different story than they had originally planned. Obviously, part of that was because of Carrie Fisher's unfortunate passing, but even putting that tragedy aside, this movie is still a mess. I think this is the worst movie in the sequel trilogy, which might be a hot take considering how much everybody hated The Last Jedi. This movie houses the infamous line explaining how Palpatine came back.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Which is just such bad writing. The fact that they were just like, oh yeah, he's back, with no explanation and no reasoning as to why. And me personally, I hated the ending. Again, this might be a hot take, but I did not like the fact that Rey and Ben kissed. And I totally dislike Rey claiming that she is a Skywalker.
Who are you?
I'm Rey.
Rey who?
Rey Skywalker.
So yeah, terrible ending to a very mid trilogy. Following that, I have The Last Jedi. I have mixed opinions on this film, but this is probably the most hated piece of Star Wars media out there. Me personally, I do not think it's as bad as everybody says, and I think it's definitely better than The Rise of Skywalker. There were some cool references to the original trilogy, like the throne scene, and it had great action. I understand that they they completely changed Luke's character from how we knew him. Even Mark Hamill said that he didn't like what they did with the character. And I agree, having Luke almost kill his nephew was pretty bad. But I think that's sort of redeemed with Luke's send-off. I think his death was amazing as he looks out at the suns, mimicking one of the most iconic shots from the day we met him. With that being said, there is a reason why I put it so low on this list. It is bottom tier for Star Wars, but again, I don't think it's as bad as everybody says. Next, I have the show The Acolyte. This would be a really cool show if it wasn't Star Wars. It had some interesting plot lines, specifically with Osha and May. However, it retconned a lot of lore, most of all making the twins be born from the Force, which undermines Anakin being the chosen one. And the motivations for some of the characters at the end didn't really make sense to me, and we'll never really know where they were trying to go with it because the show was cancelled. If it wasn't Star Wars though, I would give it a B-, but because it is Star Wars, I'm putting it as the third worst Disney project. After that, I have the show Star Wars Resistance. I expected something really good from this show considering the fact that it was the same team that made the Clone Wars and also Rebels. I thought it was going to cover Ahsoka and Sabine going off to find Ezra, which was teased in the Rebels finale, but that is not what we got. Instead, we got a show that was more of an extension of the sequel trilogy, so that disappointment already made me feel let down by this show, but I still gave it a chance. To be honest though, I don't like the animation style, and the show was a bit too kid-friendly for me, which was a drastic change from Rebels and even more, the Clone Wars. The Book of Boba Fett is what I have next. This show might as well be called The Mandalorian, because half the show doesn't even focus on Boba, instead following Din Djarin. I don't think this show had to be made, and I think the main reason why it was because they wanted to answer the age-old question of what happened to Boba after he fell into the pit in Return of the Jedi, which people have been speculating on for decades. I guess it was cool seeing the politics of Tatooine and also seeing Cad Bane, but other than that, it was another mid-project from Disney. After that, I have Solo. This was another thing that we definitely did not need. The press leading up to its release was wild, as people found out that they had to send their star actor to acting school to help him be a better Han, which is not what you want. The film was fun and had some thrills, which makes it exciting at times and definitely worth watching at least once, but it's one that you'll never have to watch again. I sort of see this as an airplane movie. It's something you'd be excited to watch if you were on a plane, but you wouldn't really seek it out on your own. Skeleton Crew is what I'm putting next. I think it's a fun show which is definitely geared more toward kids, but it's a really great watch. I think they succeeded in what they were trying to do, and seeing real kids in the galaxy was a great change up because we don't see that too often, at least not kids this young. I also think Jude Law was excellent as always, and I love the twist with his character at the end. This is a show that I'm excited to show my son when he gets a little bit older, which is exactly what I think they were trying to do with this series. Next, I'm putting Star Wars Visions. This is probably the most unique piece of Star Wars content, at least content on screen. I know that there's a lot of wild stuff in the books and comics. Visions combines pretty much every type of animation you can think of, and the stories being told in each form of animation always matches the style. Some of these stories were really good, but others weren't. At times, it felt like a task getting through parts of it, but the really good episodes made it worth it and made it shoot up on my ranking. Bad Batch is what I have next. This is an extension of the Clone Wars, and Season 1 was absolutely incredible. After Season 1 though, I felt like it sort of fell off and just didn't have the same charisma that Season 1 or the Clone Wars in general did, but it's still a really good show. The opening scene alone drew me in so much with Order 66.
What are you doing? Following orders.
After that, I am putting Obi-Wan Kenobi. This show is way overhated. There was just so much hype around its release given the fact that it's Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ewan McGregor was returning, and it obviously did not live up to those unreasonable expectations many fans had. But me personally, I enjoyed most aspects of the series, most notably the extension of Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship.
You're a great warrior, Anakin, but you'll need to prove yourself as your undoing.
I feel like they could have used more CGI on Anakin's face to age Hayden Christensen down, especially because this was supposed to be episode 2. I was really invested in how being on Tatooine affected Obi-Wan, and also enjoyed most of his interactions with Leia. It was nice seeing that Obi-Wan not only helped young Luke, but young Leia as well. Next is The Force Awakens. I feel like this movie gets crapped on simply because it's connected to the rest of the sequel trilogy, but this movie isn't bad. In fact, it got a lot of good reception when it first came out, which I was a part of. I really did like this movie. Right away, it got me invested in the new cast and had a very exciting conclusion. They might have played it a little safe, sharing very similar arcs, stories, and moments from the original trilogy, but I think fans actually enjoyed this because it had been 10 years since the last Star Wars movie. These homages almost reminded us of our younger days. A YouTube channel called Cosmonaut Variety Hour made a video titled "It's Okay to Like The Force Awakens," which he released after the others in the sequel trilogy because, honestly, people forgot that you are allowed to like some of the Disney Star Wars movies. I think the title of his video perfectly sums up the reputation that this film has. After that, I have Star Wars Rebels. I am a big fan of this show. The majority of the episodes aren't as good as the Clone Wars, but some episodes are just as good, if not better. And the main one I'm thinking of was the Season 2 finale. I think Season 1 is a little too kid-friendly, although nothing close to Star Wars Resistance. And even with it being kid-friendly, it's still top tier. From Season 2 on though, it's back to what we experienced with its predecessor. The final season of Rebels was the perfect wrap-up to the show, and it definitely did not overstay its welcome. It ended at its peak, which is a sign of a great show. Tales of the Empire is next, and this was an excellent watch. It follows Morgan Elsbeth giving her origin, and goes over Barriss Offee continuing her arc from the Clone Wars, and both stories were captivating. However, I think this is the worst of the 3 Tales of series, but it is still great. Next, I have Ahsoka. This show is what I thought Star Wars Resistance was going to be, continuing the cliffhanger at the end of the Rebels series finale, and it lived up to my expectations of how that story would continue. This show explored the galaxy farther than ever before, at least on screen. I know that there are tons of books and comics that go way deeper. Seeing so many characters return besides just Ahsoka, like Anakin, Ezra, Sabine, Thrawn, Hera, and many more, was so exciting. And seeing a live-action Clone Wars was so surreal. Hayden Christensen in the armor he wore in the Clone Wars show made me geek out the first time I saw it.
This is war, Ahsoka.
And speaking of the Clone Wars, I have Clone Wars Season 7 as the next entry. Season 7 was the only season released by Disney. All the other seasons were released by either Cartoon Network or Netflix, so I'm not going to count those seasons for this list. Season 7 of the Clone Wars was insane though. They had been working up to this for years, with the origin of Order 66, Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Order, and the Clone Wars coming to a close. The first half of the season was nothing special. It was average compared to the rest of the show, which is why this isn't higher. But the final few episodes were incredible. The Siege of Mandalore was everything I had hoped it would be. It had so much action, so much spectacle, and such great writing. This was the perfect tie-in to episode 3, and an amazing way to end such a fantastic show. Next, I have Rogue One. I think this is the best Disney Star Wars film. Deciding to adapt the opening crawl of episode 4 was a genius idea, and it made for a thrilling, heart-stopping story. Getting more backstory on the Rebel Alliance and seeing just how much sacrifice and work went into creating the rebellion, it adds a lot to the original trilogy. And learning more about the Death Star made the threat of the superweapon even more terrifying. The way it leads directly into the first scene of A New Hope was one of the coolest prequel endings I'd ever seen, and that scene with Vader in the hallway had me freaking out the first time I saw this movie. Again, this is the best Disney Star Wars movie. One of the most recent shows, Tales of the Underworld, is my next placement. This miniseries once again gives one character an origin, that being Cad Bane, and continues a character's story after the Clone Wars, that being Asajj Ventress, two fan favorites from the Clone Wars show. The series successfully improves upon these beloved characters and helps us understand their motives and walks of life. Next, I have The Mandalorian. When this show came out of the gates, it was something really special. The characters were so easy to latch onto, and the plot had so much allure to it. Season 2 was just as good as Season 1, even giving us our first look at a live-action Ahsoka. And of course, the finale gave us Luke Skywalker in his prime, which made Star Wars fans freak out when it first premiered. Season 3 wasn't as strong and had some questionable episodes. Some really questionable episodes. But overall, I think it's another piece of Disney Star Wars media that is overhated. There were some really interesting plot lines, and we also got to see more animated characters get their debut in live action, including Bo-Katan, who they could not have cast any better. Overall, this show was top tier, even with Season 3. The best Tales of series is Tales of the Jedi. This is peak animation in my opinion, and might actually surpass the original Clone Wars show as a whole. And that says a lot, especially coming from me. Count Dooku's fall to the dark side was done so well. It's a story more captivating than most things in Disney Star Wars, and telling this story in a miniseries is a challenge, but they did a great job, allowing us to see bits and pieces of different time periods in his life to put it all together. And it wasn't just Dooku's story that exceeded expectations. Every single episode was just as good and went over plots that fans wanted to see and were stories that had to be told, unlike some other projects that Disney did. And finally, the best piece of Disney Star Wars is without a doubt Andor. This is not only a great piece of Star Wars media, but a great show in general. It's up there with some of the big boys in many people's minds, which shows just how incredible this series is. This show is so captivating as we explore the underbelly of the Senate, the Rebellion, and the Empire. It's an aspect and story that George Lucas himself always wanted to tell, and Disney did right by him for this. The storytelling is flawless and has so many layers to it. This isn't a show about the Jedi. It doesn't have flashy lightsabers or fan service. It's just a really good show that happens to take place in the Star Wars universe. This is the best piece of Star Wars media we have gotten since Revenge of the Sith. And that's my ranking. Again, this is just my opinion, but I had a lot of fun sharing it with you guys. That's all I have for today though, so I will see you in the next video.